Somewhere in your bathroom right now sits a small, quiet lie you have never once questioned. 20 bottles, maybe more. Cleansers, exfoliants, antibacterial soaps, sanitizers, scented everything. An entire arsenal built around one single unspoken belief, that without it, you would be filthy, diseased, repulsive, that the human body, left alone, is a problem waiting to be solved. And here is the sentence that should genuinely disturb you. Our ancestors, the ones who lived without a single one of those bottles, without soap, without indoor plumbing, without the faintest concept of a shower routine, did not smell anywhere near as bad as you've been led to believe. In fact, in some very specific, very uncomfortable ways they may have been cleaner than you. Not because they were primitive and lucky, because they understood something about the human body that we have spent the last 100 years actively unlearning. And the more you dig into what that something is, the more unsettling a question starts to form. What if the real filth isn't the dirt we've been scrubbing away? What if it's us, right now, standing in the shower every morning, quietly destroying something we don't even know we're destroying? Let's start with the myth itself, because it runs deeper than you think. Picture the caveman in your head right now. Go on, you already have the image. Matted hair, grime-streaked skin, a smell so overwhelming it precedes him into every room. This image is so deeply embedded in modern culture that most people never once stopped to ask where it actually came from. It didn't come from evidence. It came from us, from a civilization that needed a mirror to feel superior in. Every advanced society throughout history has told itself a story about how disgusting the people who came before it were, and it is almost never based on what those people actually did. Here's the part that should stop you cold. Archaeological and anthropological evidence paints a wildly different picture than the one in your head. Early humans lived near rivers, lakes and streams not by accident, but by design. Fresh water was one of the single most valuable resources on Earth, and virtually every major settlement in human history was built beside it, which means daily, weekly, near-constant contact with water wasn't rare for our ancestors. It was unavoidable. They weren't avoiding the water. We are the ones who built entire cities on the assumption that we could live disconnected from it, and then quietly wondered why our skin started falling apart. Now here's where the story turns strange, because water alone doesn't explain everything. There's a second character in this story. One that almost never gets credit. Smoke. For hundreds of thousands of years, humans lived intimately, constantly, inescapably close to fire. Cooking fires. Warming fires. Fires burning through entire nights to keep predators at bay. And smoke, it turns out, isn't just smell and soot. It's a weapon. Wood smoke contains natural antimicrobial and antibacterial compounds, chemical byproducts of combustion that actively suppress the growth of certain bacteria and parasites on skin and in clothing. Entire populations throughout human history, without knowing a single word of modern chemistry, were passively sterilizing themselves every single night, simply by sitting near the thing that kept them alive. Sit with that for a second. The fire that protected them from wolves was simultaneously protecting them from something smaller, and just as dangerous, that they couldn't even see. They weren't dirty. They were being treated by an environment we've spent the last century removing ourselves from entirely. But here's the twist that should genuinely unsettle you. Because this isn't really a story about ancient hygiene at all. It's a story about a war. One most people don't know they're fighting. One being fought right now, on your skin. Every single time you step into a hot shower, you have a microbiome. Not just in your gut. On your skin. An entire invisible ecosystem of bacteria, fungi and microorganisms living across every inch of your body, right now, as you watch this. And for most of human history, this ecosystem developed the way every ecosystem develops, slowly, in balance with its environment, shaped by dirt, water, smoke, sweat, and constant low-level exposure to the natural world. Modern hygiene didn't refine that ecosystem. It carpet-bombed it. Antibacterial soap doesn't discriminate. It cannot tell the difference between a harmful pathogen and the beneficial bacteria your skin has depended on for its entire evolutionary history. Every scrub, every antibacterial wash, every long, hot, chemical-laden shower strips away a layer of an ecosystem that took hundreds of thousands of years to calibrate itself to you specifically. And here's the disturbing part dermatologists have started quietly raising alarms about. Some of the exact skin conditions we now treat as chronic, unavoidable modern problems. Certain forms of eczema, chronic dryness, persistent irritation. Even some acne patterns may be linked, at least in part, to this exact destruction. We are not treating a hygiene deficiency. We may be manufacturing one. Which raises a question that should genuinely make you uncomfortable the next time you reach for the soap. What if the human body was never actually the problem industrial civilization claimed it was? What if it was working exactly as designed, self-regulating, self-protecting, chemically balanced through a relationship with water, smoke, sweat, and soil that took hundreds of thousands of years to perfect, and an entire commercial industry looked at that ancient, functioning system and decided there was money to be made convincing you it was broken. Because that is precisely what happened. Let's go back further, because the deeper history here is stranger than a simple story of neglect versus modern cleanliness. Ancient civilizations across the world were not hygiene-illiterate savages stumbling blindly through filth. The Indus Valley civilization, thousands of years before modern plumbing, built some of the earliest known sophisticated drainage and bathing systems on Earth. Ancient Egyptians developed early soap-like substances from animal fats and ash. Roman society built enormous public bathhouses that functioned as social, medical, and hygienic centers of entire cities, with heated floors and elaborate water systems that some modern buildings still can't match in efficiency. Cleanliness is not a modern invention. What's modern is the specific, narrow, chemically aggressive version of cleanliness we've built, and the deeply profitable idea that natural human odor, natural human oils, and natural human bacteria are something to be feared and eliminated entirely, every single day, without exception. That idea has a surprisingly short, surprisingly recent, and surprisingly commercial history. Here's where it gets genuinely disturbing, because this wasn't an accident. It was engineered. In the early 20th century, soap and hygiene product companies faced a real problem. People weren't buying nearly enough of their product. Daily bathing wasn't yet a cultural norm in much of the industrialized world. So marketing campaigns didn't just sell soap, they manufactured shame. Advertisements began systematically associating natural body odor with social failure, unemployment, romantic rejection, social exclusion. Entire ad campaigns were built specifically around convincing ordinary people that their natural, untreated bodies were a liability that needed daily chemical correction to remain acceptable in polite society. This wasn't public health messaging. It was one of the most successful manufactured insecurities in the history of consumer marketing. And it worked so completely that within a few generations, the idea that skipping a daily shower makes you disgusting became so deeply embedded in Western culture that most people now experience it as an obvious biological fact. It isn't one. It's an advertisement that outlived its own campaign and quietly became your personal belief system. Now here's the part that should follow you out of this video and into your own bathroom tonight. If the fear of natural body odor is largely manufactured, and the modern hygiene ritual is largely commercial rather than biological, what else? In the deeply personal, deeply private rituals you perform on your own body every single day without question, might not actually be yours. How many of your daily habits are really just successful advertising campaigns from a century ago, so old and so deeply absorbed into culture that they've disguised themselves as instinct? You didn't choose to feel disgusted by your own natural scent. Someone built that feeling, on purpose, decades before you were born, and sold it to your grandparents so effectively that it became invisible by the time it reached you. Let's be precise here, because this isn't an argument against hygiene itself. Cleanliness genuinely matters. Modern sanitation has saved more human lives than nearly any other invention in history. Hand washing prevents disease. Clean water prevents death on a civilizational scale. This isn't a story about abandoning hygiene. It's a story about the difference between hygiene and something else, entirely a manufactured, chemically excessive, commercially profitable ritual that convinced an entire civilization its natural biology was an enemy to be defeated every single morning. Ancient humans weren't dirtier than you. They were simply living in closer, more constant relationship with water, fire, and their own skin. An unbroken, self-regulating system, refined over hundreds of thousands of years, disrupted almost entirely within the span of a single century, by an industry that discovered fear sells better than facts. And here's the part that should genuinely haunt you. Somewhere, in a river thousands of years ago, a human being stepped into cold water at the end of a long day, rinsed away sweat and ash, and walked out clean not because a bottle told them to, not because an advertisement made them afraid of their own body, but because their body, their environment, and their instincts were still speaking the same language. We broke that conversation, not with dirt, with chemistry, marketing, and an entire century spent convincing ourselves that our own skin, left alone for even a single day, was something shameful. So the next time you stand in a hot shower, surrounded by bottles promising to fix a body that was never actually broken, ask yourself the question this entire video has been quietly building toward. Are you cleaning yourself? Or are you still, without realizing it, paying off a debt to an advertisement from 100 years ago that convinced you your own body was something to be ashamed of? Because somewhere underneath all that foam, all that fragrance, all that fear, there's a version of you that was never actually dirty to begin with. It's just been buried under 100 years of very, very good marketing.